Hello and welcome to Dell's Gaming, and this is from the Devs Designer, because today when I went to do some testing on some of the ships for the campaign, I noticed there is a new version been released. So the developer Nick Smart has, and the team of guys he's got working for him, have released a lot of bug fixes and changes since the previous version, plus a few changes which I'll just go through because some of it's interesting for people that may be building ships or just for interest's sake. You might like to know what the changes are. So with up to version at this moment I'm running 2.2.25.2, so 2.2.252. okay, so that was released on Steam, and a lot of the notes are bug fixes and ship changes to make them fit with the new items. Graphically, a few glitches, but nothing major change. So what have we got that is changed? Now, first one, which I really like, is sound. You might it's a little quiet in the game at the moment, and that's because there is a new system where repetitive sounds are slowly decreased in volume. So to simulate that, if we go over to this engine, which is not turned on, and then generate some power to turn it on, now I don't know if you noticed, I'll turn off any auto gain, but the background sounds increased and then start decreasing again over time. Now you can adjust this in the options if we go to the sound. So if I go to sound and set the repetitive to, so that's almost like normal, where you've got sounds of the sea, the rotors, the engines, everything is just making a crap load of noise. So now we'll set it to the 50%, which is normal level. And you should have heard, especially the rotor sound, steadily decrease. It's now just a little bit of a background noise. And you can set that further as well. So that rotor noise is it's just about disappeared now because I set the attenuation to 1. So basically it will take it down. Now we've still got the steam engines are making a bit of a noise. If I take this down to none, but you can't hear the engine here. The steam engines are still giving a bit of a noise, but they'll go. Okay, I like the 50% is quite good. So it allows you to know that something is working. But after it starts up, it will just go down to a lower background noise, especially if you're working on a rotorcraft, or the engines are running at 100% all the time. That will just get a little bit wearing on the ears. Okay, some other little bits which are slightly just graphical, and for those that like building items which are realistic, we got these railings. So these railings basically are a cheap way of doing railings. Now before, people I think have tended to use a window block, where I'll be glass, using it. They've sometimes used a window block here as a railing, which is one way to do it, but now they have put in this block here, which is, let me just bring the details up. So it has a armor of 3, health 75, material cost 3, so it has a slight armor value, similar to wood really, but so nothing special. Basically it is a paddle which has no executable functionality to it, so it won't cost, won't try to move your ship forward. Anyway, that's just for those that like doing that side. Now another element is I put stairs in all my places, so my character can go up and down areas and in and out, etc., and it just looks good. Now there was supposed to be some changes so that slopes would work with someone going up, but this little ramp I created here, let's get a bit of a run up, let's see if we can. No, and now I'm going backwards now and then go this way, and I just can't get off the ramp. That's really, I can't get off the slope, which is, I have to now untag, let's just put that in, disable my boots, and then when I get to that I can hop on, and I have to kangaroo up basically. Yeah, and going down is not as smooth as it should be. Now you say, okay, well stay in that mode. Well, the only problem with this mode is now I can't go up steps either. I have to kangaroo. It's okay if you're Australian, you can be a wallaby or a kangaroo. You can go up places, but I like to be able to just go around, and that's just okay. Hopefully that one will get fixed. It was supposed to be similar to this. Right, while we're up here, control blocks. There is an extra component added to the control blocks. The only ones that I saw is under the controls you can see primary, secondary and tertiary commands. Tertiary commands, which are basically from the complex controller, where you can set certain drive components to be primary, secondary or tertiary. Let's get that word right. Tertiary. That's tongue twister. Right. Anyway, so you can set an action based upon a command. Now this is, some people that like to make highly usable manual ships may find that useful for controlling certain ACPs. I don't use it myself, but I thought I would mention it. And okay, while we're up here, another little change. This could have an effect to people as if they have been building ships. So I'm going to take over this aircraft because I need an aircraft to show you this function. The change has been that wing blocks, which are here, and you can see at the front, now have a lift effect even if you put them upside down. So I know there's a lot of people that when they build their ships, they want to use the wing block for looks. So what they do is they turn it around and then they place it. The only problem now is that is actually providing lift. If you look at the lift component in the center of the craft there, even though I'm placing an upside down, and you say, oh no, I've not upside down it. Okay, let's do that again. So I've turned it upside down. No, that's still providing lift. What if I can't put it that way, because you see how even putting it that way, it's auto aligning and providing lift. So let's just go there. That's moved the lift. If I swap it around, it's providing lift. So if you have put wing components in, be aware that they might all suddenly start providing lift. Now I think existing components will not be changed. They'll just go in there as a dummy existing, but just be aware if you're building aircraft. What I tend to do, I use one of two blocks. One is helicopter blades. So in air, I just use the helicopter blade, which is the old one. It's only cheap, armor of 1, health of 50, and it looks very similar to the wing component, so it's in keeping. The other one I tend to use is the Deady Blade extension. Health of 75, armor of 5. It actually can act as a bit of armor, but unless you colour it up, it doesn't always. I'm in build mode here. Let's take myself out of build mode. Yep. It doesn't look quite the same as the wing blocks, but it does have an armor effect. So, okay, there are the two. There are a couple of options. That's just for building. Be aware of that particular area. Right, next we have missiles. Now, not a big change to missiles. I was hoping they were going to put the real missile work, but I think that's a little bit off yet. Maybe a month or two away, where we can have different gauge missiles, which will be excellent. Anyway, for the moment, changes to the missiles. First of all, is you can see there's a little UI. So when I point at a particular missile, it tells me some details. This is when I'm pointing at the gantry, should I say, or the element. So it shows me it's ready to fire, variable thruster and fins. So it's telling me a little bit about the missile. If I look at the controller, it's got ready to fire and it's not controlled by an AI weapon slot. So it's telling me some information. The other visual cue is, if I just come out of this for a second, you'll notice blocks where it's got similar is joined together. So here is actually two fuel blocks that have been made to look together. Here we have 4 warheads and they're all merged together. So normally, if you had 4 different warheads, you'd see all these little blocky 1, 2, 3, 4 elements. Now, those 4 are made into one big block. That's quite nice looking. Other little bits on the missile is the UI. We have a new UI. Some bits on this I really like, some bits are just annoying, but I can get used to it. So you can, when you're changing something, you can select which area you want to look at. One change is now you've only got variable thruster, and the torpedo propeller has got the variability built into it. So I should say you can only have thrusters at the rear. They must be on the rear block. They can't be anywhere else. And you can only have 1 thruster. You'll notice nothing else. So you can't build something that's got 4, 5 thrusters. To a degree, I understand some of it. There possibly was some elements where people were putting stupid amounts of thrusters to try to clip through ships. Some little exploit like that potentially. Other bit is I dislike, because I used to create a boosted missile. So I used to have 1 short-range thruster, like a short-range thruster, which had just only boosted for a couple of seconds, then to get it high into the atmosphere, and then I had a very slow variable thruster, which would take it the long distance. So those ones will no longer work, but they were just tested. It's not really a problem. And the variable thruster can go quite high. It can go up to 3,000. I think that used to be a lot higher, 10,000. So they are limiting the speed of missiles. This may be a first stage towards the next gauging of missiles. We'll see. Other bits. The other bit is seekers can only seekers can only go at the front. Now, one problem I'm seeing at the moment, which is annoying, is if you wanted to make a beam riding system. So if I just go there, I just want to check something. So I haven't actually checked this one. Oh, the beam rider is there. Okay, that's okay. I couldn't see the beam rider there, so you can still make a beam rider thumper. But it does mean that people can't make invalid missiles. It helps a little bit. One problem is if I'm here and I click anywhere else, I can't deselect. I can't exit out of there. I have to make sure I select the same site system again. Anyway, that's just a little minor element. Okay, so new UI. Good bit about this, all the stats down the side here. So it's going to give you some basic flight statistics. before you even get into flight as such. So we can see how, you know, thrust duration, speeds, turn rates, etc. So you can get an idea, fragments, damage costs, sorry, damage amount. So you can get an idea without just doing lots of changes. Other little changes on missiles. The one turn has been changed quite a bit. It's more effective. Also, now you'll get less wobble when the missile detects a target, because as soon as your detection head detects a target, it takes over and turns off the one turn. Previously, the one turn kept on trying to pull it back to a level flight in the direction of the target, which gave you that wobble. And on occasion, a missile could wobble over a target because it locked on. It would then pull the nose up to go into target and then lose lock and so forth. So hopefully now, as soon as it's got target, it will aim at the target as soon as it's got lock. There also is some logic changes they've made, but I haven't got exact details of what they've changed in the one turn and missile logic, but we'll see it as it goes through. The couple of bits, if you do manual fire, if you have a stagger now on a missile, if I click the button once, if I go onto the missiles, you'll notice only one missile fired. To fire all of them, I have to hold the button, my middle mouse button down. Another quick one is the trails have been improved. Quite nice looking little puffs of smoke and jet trail. Very nice. So another little visual enhancement to the missiles. Another little bit to missiles, and this may affect people that create bombs and other types of launches. Now, one problem that the missiles and bombs have is when they drop out the launcher, they start to turn straight away. And they just fall out of the launcher rather than being ejected. So they've changed the logic so that the missile will, before it starts to turn, will fully exit the launcher. The problem is if you had built systems like I've got here, let me just turn my light on, where I've got reverse launches. So previously these would just drop out. They might hit the back and just get nudged a little bit, but they would just drop out. The problem now is that they don't exit properly. So what I'm going to do is I will take over this ship and sit in it just so I can make sure I can see it, and I'll just spawn something in to attack so we can see what happens now with a missile. Excuse the noise at the beginning, that it's now attenuated. So we're coming into our area. Hopefully this should drop some bombs. Okay, so you can see they all got hooked up in the launcher because they could, and even the one I'd set to the center actually as well, because they could not eject out the rear because of these blocks. So what you might want to do is add some ejectors and then either make the path out the rear clear, or as I have done on this one, is put an ejection elevation or azimuth so to force it out of the bomb bay. I've left one without just so that you can see what happens. I'm going to put its arming delay as high as possible so you can see what happens if you don't leave the exit. So we'll just spawn something in again. Now so that one, even though it had an ejector, still did not eject properly. The others all ejected. The only problem with the ejection issue, let me just get off this so I can stabilise that, is it threw the bombs out quite far backwards or downwards, which means if you had built dive bombers, which I have built quite a few dive bombers, that relied on just releasing at a certain point so that they would all without guidance hit the target, they're all going to need to be reworked somewhat. So in the campaign, my Hadley Page bombers I'll need to redo those potentially. Those ones might be okay because they're downward bombs, but some of my against a deep water guard torpedo bombers, etc., that use this it would just fall out system will have to be changed. Okay, one other change that I read in the notes but haven't got full details of in all of the situations is that on APS shells there's been some changes just to balance things up and change some of the values. So now, first of all, heat shells have had a little bit of a change. It seems like they've had a little bit of change of how they work and the penetration metrics for a particular size. Let's put this up to something reasonable size just for the moment, and how the fragmentation works on the heat ammo. Also the cone, so the cone has been changed to a 30-degree per cone rather than a 15, which it was before, but the penetration has been reduced a little bit. It says that supposedly that will make it a little bit more reliable. I'm going to give those another go, because shaped charge, when you had good propellant density, is something that I hadn't really played with properly, and I think I needed to have a let's get to the right one. I needed to have a little bit of a work getting the penetration factor up to do a good penetration head with the number of particles. But we'll have a look through that. The other area was that the kinetic damage on certain heads had been reduced on the kinetic damage, specifically HE, I think it was frag. Actually, looking at most of them, let's go through here. I think Sabo, EMP, frag, squash head, HE head, they had all of their kinetic damage reduced. So AP were fairly much the same. They've got good kinetic damage, armor piercing, etc. But something like that was a frag. Let's go over here. Let's go over to a squash head. It's had its kinetic damage here significantly reduced. So, but they had their armor piercing values slightly increased if you're on some of these other heads. So again, just a little bit of a balancing. The other one is frag heads, and I'm not sure if this also affects missiles, but it was put in the APS group, in that it's reduced the amount of extra damage you get from having your cone angle high. So previously, setting the cone angle at 180 gave you 3 times the amount of damage. This is now being reduced to 2.5, but the lower levels are still at the previous values. So this now means that having it at 180 isn't always the most obvious choice. It's being changed now so that having different angles may have a benefit in some way, and obviously people can play with that to work through what they would like to do. Setting it all to a 1 degree cone may have value to people now. They may decide, that is a good way of doing damage in a limited area, because obviously the damage isn't focused. If you do 180 degrees, it goes everywhere. So although it's showing a higher damage, so we've got there, it's 237 on 30. If I set that to 180, in theory, because all of those fragments, we've got the same number of fragments we've got here, but they're going 180, so they are lower, but they're going in all directions. Anyway, this is similar to, I think this is going to be similar to the old frag system, where damage can be focused into a small area. So anyway, that's something I'm sure people will play with on Fragments. Okay, next section is an area I didn't cover last time, so I'm gonna, and it's been fixed, so we're gonna cover it this time. So I'm just gonna move to a different area of the map. So this is the little land area southeast of the normal spawn area, and this is one of my little test ATV land vehicles. I don't do many land vehicles because the game doesn't need them, but I do have a bit of fun building them. Some of the changes have come up have been in wheels. Now the first bit is how some of the turning, suspension, etc. So first bit is we have, under the turning, we can say that the rear wheel is reversed. So the rear wheels will now turn in the opposite direction. And you can also set their turning angle. So if we use this one as an example, so if I just put a bit of speed on, not too much, just there, and now start turning, you'll notice the rear wheels turn in the opposite direction. And you can define, so these ones have a 25-degree angle and these have a 50. So if you want to start working at it, you can change the angle and get it so it turns nicely in a particular area, which is quite good. Another element which has been added, whoops, I've just gone under the world, so let me just get back up. There we go. If you go through the land, it doesn't like it. Anyway, you can now modify the suspension details on each of the wheels. So you can start mucking around with damper forces, spring forces. Now an interesting one is spring lengths. I quite like this one. So if you want to make a nice high riding vehicle with maximum, we'll put it back there, that's about right. Right, now the other one is you can do copy to, while I'm on here I'll show you this other bit, which is copy to wheels on the same side or copy to all wheels. This is good in certain situations, but it also has a few problems I have noticed. Primarily around the fact that if you have different wheels like I have here, set up differently, even if you do this the same, they overwrites them. So this first one has a 50 angle, the second one has a 25 angle. That will get overwritten. I'll ignore that for the moment. I'm just going to set this to copy to all wheels. So basically what you could do is set up all your dampening suspension first and then sort out your turning afterwards. But if I copy to all wheels, you'll notice, if we come out there, we've now got a bit of a high rider. So it's pushed itself out a little bit and is riding nice and high as such. Could be interesting for some people. I think they might find that interesting. You can go the opposite way. Within reason, I found if you set this to 0, it does not like it. It totally crashed on me. So I'm just going to set it down to, yeah, if you set it to 0, actually the wheels disappear. Right, if we copy that to all wheels. So now we've got a bit of a low rider. So that's going to be dragging on the ground. It's got various little useful parts. I could find this and think that this would be useful. As you can see, it's now removed the set to reverse the wheels at the back, so I'd have to go and change those. Anyway, I won't save that. That's an interesting element, and hopefully for people who had bouncy tanks, you can go now adjust your rebound forces on the dampener, so when it bounces down from the ground, it will be nice and solid rather than bouncing straight up. That's usually to do with the rebound. What I have found, it's to do with the rebound force. If you set your rebound force up quite high, and the spring, we'll set the springs a little bit higher as well on this. Let's see if we can get a bouncy. So the dampener's up quite high here. I think that is the way. Let's just give that a go. Nope, that was the wrong way around. Let me just try that again. So if we set the dampen force up high and yeah, we can see it's already, you can see it's starting to bounce around. I've done nothing to it already. If I take it up and then drop it down, bing, we've got a nice bouncy ships. And they're going to start bouncing all over the place. So we want to, just before it goes crazy, put them down to a little bit more normal. So if you've got a particularly bouncy ship, you can play with your suspension, so to speak, and cure that. Final one on land vehicles. This is my, let me just swap to it. This is my tank version of, or tracked version of the same vehicle, and it's got a couple of interesting elements. Again, under here we've now got an option, because these are powered wheels, not turning wheels, we can set it to tank mode. Now what that means is if I now turn, you'll notice that the wheels are spinning in place. So one side turns one way and the other side in the other direction. It's not quite flat enough. I think I need to change the suspension. So it's almost doing a spin in place instead of, because one side will go one way, and then if I go turn the opposite direction, I'll turn down the speed a little bit. So it makes it a little bit tight to turning. Now one problem I have noticed is I've had to add turning wheels because the AI will not use the tank turning to turn the ship. It's okay manual mode, but it won't work in with the AI. So that's it working. There we go. Flat enough ground. So it's just turning in place because that side's turning one way, and if I go to the other side of the aircraft of the vehicle, turning that same way, you'll notice these ones are going forward. Anyway, that's just the little changes on there, which I believe are interesting for those, and those that like the land vehicles, we can get rid of the bouncing and start using them. I don't use them that much, but maybe in the future, maybe the campaigns will be a little bit nicer as such. And sorry, have more land to make these more fun and have to build some land vehicles, or at least have some advantage of building a land vehicles. Anyway, that's all of the changes I could find in the patch notes, which are to be shown, that didn't seem to be fixes or just regressions, etc. Hopefully that will be okay. I'm going to have to go and test all of my ships before I do another campaign video, because I think some of the missiles certainly will start blowing up in my ship, and I'd like to test some of the shells again just to see if heat is any better, but I'm not going to spend too long. I think there's not to be, it's a balancing rather than necessarily these are suddenly extra powerful. But anyway, that's it for now. Hopefully get another video out soon. Until then, keep playing the game and have fun.